Hey, welcome back. In this video, I'd like to spend a few minutes discussing the attitudes that we potentially can develop and nurture once we leave the Watchtower organization. And what I'm going to do is take two historical examples of people that are worth learning from. One that is worth learning from in a negative context, and the other that is definitely worth learning from in a positive context. Okay, so let's get into it. Shah Darius, who ruled the Persian Empire from 522 BCE until 486 BCE, assigned a slave to remind him every day of the Athenians and their insult to him when they sided with a Greek governor who revolted in the city of Miletus. What happened here was a Greek governor of Miletus decided to overturn the Persian rule in his city and defect to Greek influence. He sought influence initially from Sparta, who rejected his plea for help, but then turned to Athens, and Athens agreed to support him. And so the Persian king never wanted to forget that betrayal. He assigned a slave to remind him every day of his life that he needed to not only nurse his grudge against Athens, but eventually do something about it. He fed this bitterness. He fed this resentment intentionally with the desire to act in an aggressive and belligerent way towards what he saw was a betrayal. Now, this action demonstrates a real self-importance, an almost narcissistic bent in this king. It was as if the betrayal needed to be built up and grown and matured to be something that he had to act on eventually. Now, when we hold on to resentment, when we nurture bitterness, it only harms ourselves. Now, this doesn't mean that if we have been seriously hurt or harmed, that we don't seek justice. That's not what I'm saying. What I'm trying to say here is that if you are bitter and resentful and you continually feed that bitterness and resentment, what you're essentially doing is allowing Watchtower to dictate your behaviour and your attitudes. In fact, what you're doing is what they want you to do. They want you to be consumed with a selfish desire for revenge, for an act of reciprocity or revenge that satisfies your need, your emotional need for justice. Now, I felt that way myself, but we can't continue like that, because to continue or even to feed that attitude is something that serves the interests of a Watchtower themselves. Now, about 300 years later, the ruler of the Roman Empire, Marcus Aurelius, who ruled from 161 CE until 180 CE, had a much more modest and gracious attitude, definitely, than Shah Darius. The Roman emperors, essentially after Julius Caesar, had this deification attached to them. They were treated almost like gods, sometimes actually worshipped as gods. And of course, this constant worship and adoration will have a profound effect on a person if they're encountering it day after day. And so Marcus Aurelius, in order for his ego not to get the better of him, Marcus Aurelius assigned a servant to follow him wherever there were crowds around him. The servant was commanded to follow the emperor and whisper into his ear, "You're just a man. You're just a man." Jehovah's Witnesses are constantly reminded of how persecuted they are, how hated they are, how isolated they are in the world, how unique they are. They shun people in perpetuity for not accepting the rules of their leaders. They often play the victim, and they are incredibly intolerant of those who espouse different viewpoints than they have. And so this is what I want to say. Don't be like that. Don't play the victim. Don't feed your bitterness, even if you have good cause to do so. Don't feed it. Starve it. Attempt to surround yourself with positive feelings, with positive people. Try to grow as a person. Try to be tolerant. Try to understand both yourself and other people, even people that have hurt you. In other words, be like Marcus Aurelius. When he gave thought to what the best way to enact revenge on his enemies was, he said this: "The best revenge is not to be like your enemy." I think that's a wonderful thought. I think it's deep. I think it's true. I think it has tremendous meaning for Jehovah's Witnesses. And so when you leave a high control group, be that Jehovah's Witnesses, the Mormons, Scientology, whatever it is, you will have feelings of bitterness and resentment and anger. As soon as you can, strangle those feelings. Don't be like your enemies. Don't be like Shah Darius. Be like Marcus Aurelius. Okay, thanks for watching, and see you next time.